The distant howl of a desert wind carried the scent of blood across the parched Arizona landscape. As Willow Zane frantically scrubbed crimson stains from her trembling hands in a shallow creek 20 miles east of Fort Bowie. Her once fine dress was torn and splattered with evidence of what she'd done, her copper hair falling in wild tangles around a face that hadn't known peace in nearly 2 years. The year was 1878, and the territory was unforgiving to those who traveled alone, especially women. But Willow had learned to survive, though the cost weighed heavier on her soul with each passing day. She didn't hear the approaching hoofbeats until they were nearly upon her. Panicking, she reached for the revolver hidden in the folds of her skirt, whipping around to face whatever new threat had found her. "Easy there, madam," a deep voice called out. The man sat tall in his saddle, silhouetted against the setting sun. His face was partially obscured by the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat, but she could make out a strong jaw lined with several days' worth of stubble. "I mean you no harm." Willow's hand didn't waver. "That's what they all say before they prove otherwise." The stranger dismounted with careful, deliberate movements. As he stepped forward, the dying sunlight revealed features that might have once been called handsome, before the wilderness had carved its harsh lines into his face. He wasn't young, perhaps mid-30s, but there was a vitality to him that spoke of a man who had faced the worst the frontier could offer and emerged standing. "Name's Noah Yates," he said, keeping his hands visible. "I'm heading to Fort Bowie. Saw your tracks leading from the road. Thought someone might be in trouble." "The only trouble here is you interrupting my washing," Willow replied sharply, though her voice betrayed a slight quiver. Noah's eyes a piercing blue that reminded her of the sky before a storm drifted to her blood-stained dress and back to her face. "Seems like a mighty lot of blood for laundry day." Willow's grip tightened on her gun. "It's not your concern." "Maybe not," he conceded. "But there's 3 riders about 4 miles back who seem mighty interested in finding whoever left that trail. They didn't strike me as the social type." Fear clutched at Willow's heart. She hadn't been careful enough covering her tracks. "How do I know you're not with them?" "You don't," Noah said simply. "But I reckon if I was, I'd have already called them over instead of warning you." The logic was sound, but Willow had learned to trust no one. Still, she lowered her gun slightly. "What do you want?" "Nothing. But I'm guessing you need to be elsewhere fast. I can help with that." "I don't need your charity." Noah shrugged. "Not offering charity, just seems we might be heading in the same direction. Safer to travel together in this country." Willow weighed her options. The men following her would kill her without hesitation if they caught up. This stranger might do the same, but at least he was offering her a chance. "I'll ride with you as far as the next town," she decided. "Then we part ways." Noah nodded. "Fair enough." He gestured to his horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion. "Samson here can carry us both till nightfall. There's a spot about 10 miles ahead where we can make camp off the main trail." Reluctantly, Willow gathered her meager belongings and approached. Noah offered his hand to help her mount, but she ignored it, struggling onto the horse behind him with stubborn independence. As they rode away from the creek, Willow stole one last glance at the bloodied water. Another piece of her past left behind, but never forgotten. They rode in silence as the desert landscape transformed in the fading light. The heat of the day gave way to the sharp chill of night, and Willow found herself unconsciously leaning closer to Noah's back for warmth. "You got a name?" he asked eventually, his voice carrying over his shoulder. She hesitated. "Willow. Just Willow. Just Willow is all you need to know." Noah accepted this with a nod. "Well, just Willow. We're coming up on that spot I mentioned. There's good cover, a small spring, and high ground to keep watch." The location proved to be exactly as he described a natural alcove among towering rock formations that hid them from the main trail, while providing clear sightlines in all directions. Noah efficiently set about making a small, nearly smokeless fire while Willow stood awkwardly to the side, still wary of her unexpected companion. "You know how to use that gun you've been clutching all evening?" Noah asked as he pulled provisions from his saddlebags. "I wouldn't carry it if I didn't," she replied defensively. "Good. Because if those men are who I think they are, they won't give up easy." Willow tensed. "And who do you think they are?" "Clayton Rourke's men. They've been terrorizing settlements from here to the New Mexico territory. Robbing, killing, worse." He looked up at her, his expression unreadable in the dim firelight. "They don't usually leave survivors." The name sent ice through her veins, but Willow kept her face neutral. "I've heard of them." Noah handed her a strip of jerky and a canteen. "Want to tell me why they'd be after you?" "Want to tell me why you're so interested in my business?" she countered. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Fair enough." He settled back against his saddle. "We should get some sleep. I'll take first watch." "I don't sleep around strangers." "Then it's going to be a long night for you." His eyes met hers across the fire. "I'm not your enemy, Willow." "I've heard that before." "I imagine you have," he said quietly. "But sometimes, even out here, there are still good people." Willow almost laughed. "Good people don't last long in the territories." "Some do. They just carry more scars than most." Something in his tone made her study him more carefully. Noah Yates was clearly a man who knew how to survive in this harsh land. His clothes were well worn but practical, his movements efficient and purposeful. The calluses on his hands spoke of hard work, and the way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings revealed a vigilance born of experience. But there was something else, a gentleness in how he tended the fire, the careful way he handled his horse. He didn't move like a predator, despite the weathered Colt revolver at his hip and the rifle secured to his saddle. "Get some rest," he said, interrupting her thoughts. "I'll wake you in a few hours." Against her better judgment, Willow found herself drifting off, the day's exhaustion finally catching up to her. Her last conscious thought was that if Noah Yates wanted her dead, he'd had plenty of opportunity already. She woke to his hand on her shoulder, instantly alert. "Riders," he whispered, nodding toward the trail below their position. Willow silently drew her gun, joining Noah at the edge of their hideout. In the pale moonlight, she could make out 3 men moving slowly along the path, clearly tracking something or someone. "They're following our trail," Noah murmured. "It'll lead them right to us," Willow hissed. Noah shook his head. "I doubled back twice and rode through the creek bed for half a mile. They're following an older trail. Still, they're too close for comfort." They watched in tense silence as the men conferred below, their hushed voices occasionally carried upward by the night air. "She can't have gotten far," one said. "The boss wants her found by sunup." "Why's he so set on this one woman anyway?" another complained. "You know why," the third man growled. "She took something that belongs to him, and nobody steals from Clayton Rourke." Willow's breath caught and Noah glanced at her sharply. She avoided his gaze, focusing instead on the men below as they continued their search, eventually moving on down the trail. When they were out of earshot, Noah turned to her. "What did you take from Clayton Rourke that's got him sending men to hunt you down?" "I told you. It's not your concern," Willow snapped, moving away from the edge. "It became my concern when I decided to help you," Noah countered, following her. "I need to know what I'm dealing with." "You're not dealing with anything. Once we reach Fort Bowie, we go our separate ways." Noah ran a hand through his dark hair in frustration. "Rourke doesn't give up easily. If he's sent men after you, he'll send more. He has connections all over the territory." "I'm aware of that," Willow said bitterly. Then you should also be aware that I'm risking my neck by helping you. The least you could do is tell me why." Willow stared at him, conflict evident in her green eyes. Finally, she reached into her boot and pulled out a small leather pouch. Opening it, she revealed a gold ring set with an impressive emerald. "This is what he wants," she said flatly. "It belonged to my mother." Noah studied the ring without touching it. "And Rourke claims it's his. My late husband owed Rourke money. When he couldn't pay, Rourke took everything we had, including this." Her voice hardened. "Then he killed my husband anyway and decided I should work off the remaining debt in his establishments." Understanding dawned on Noah's face. "You escaped." "I did more than escape," Willow said, her voice barely audible. "I killed one of his men to do it." Noah was silent for a long moment. "How long ago?" "6 months. I've been running ever since. Every time I think I've lost them, they find me again." She tucked the ring away. "Now you know. If you want to leave me here, I understand." Instead of answering immediately, Noah began packing up their small camp. "We should move. Those men might circle back once they realize they've lost the trail." Willow stared at him in confusion. "Did you hear what I said? I killed a man." "I heard you." Noah secured his bedroll to his saddle. "I also heard you say they were going to force you into prostitution after murdering your husband. Sounds to me like you did what you had to do." His matter-of-fact acceptance stunned her into silence. For months, she'd been carrying the weight of her actions alone, convinced that no one would understand the desperate choices she'd made. "We need to reach Fort Bowie by tomorrow evening," Noah continued, as if they were discussing nothing more serious than the weather. "I know people there who can help." "Why?" Willow finally asked, the question that had been burning in her mind since he first approached her. "Why are you helping me?" Noah paused in his preparations, fixing her with those penetrating blue eyes. "Because a long time ago, someone helped me when I needed it most. I'm just passing it along." There was more to the story. Willow could see it in the shadows that crossed his face, but he offered nothing further, and she didn't press. Instead, she helped him finish breaking camp, and soon they were riding again, keeping to the less traveled paths as dawn broke over the desert. By midday, the heat had become oppressive. They stopped in the shade of a rocky outcropping to rest Samson and share a sparse meal of jerky and hard biscuits. "You know this area well," Willow observed as Noah sketched a rough map in the dirt, showing their route to Fort Bowie. "I should. I grew up about 50 miles west of here." He pointed to a winding line. "This is the San Pedro River. We'll follow it north for a while before cutting east. It's longer, but there's water and better cover." "You're not just a passing traveler, are you?" Willow asked, studying him. A faint smile touched Noah's lips. "Never claimed to be." "Then what are you?" "A lawman. Used to be. Served as a deputy in Tombstone for 3 years. But not anymore." Noah's expression darkened. "No, not anymore." Willow recognized the signs of a painful past. She saw them every time she looked in a mirror. "What happened?" "Same thing that happens to most lawmen who stay honest too long," he said with a shrug that couldn't quite hide the bitterness. "Made enemies of the wrong people." "Rourke?" Noah nodded. "Among others. I helped bring down one of his operations near the border. He retaliated by burning my home to the ground." His voice grew distant. "My wife was inside." Willow felt a pang of sympathy cut through her usual defenses. "I'm sorry." "It was 5 years ago now." Noah stood, signaling an end to the conversation. "We should keep moving." As they continued their journey, Willow found herself watching Noah more carefully. His revelation explained much about him: the vigilance, the skill with which he navigated the wilderness, the willingness to help a stranger being hunted by Rourke's men. They were kindred spirits in a way, both scarred by the same man's cruelty. They made good progress throughout the afternoon, But as evening approached, Noah grew increasingly alert, frequently checking their back trail. "Something's wrong," he finally said, reining in Samson on a rise that gave them a good view of the path behind them. Willow followed his gaze but saw nothing. "What is it? It's too quiet. No birds, no nothing," he frowned. "And we're being followed. Rourke's men, maybe. Or someone else entirely. This territory is full of desperate people." He considered their options. "There's an old line shack about 2 miles ahead. Belonged to a rancher I knew. We can hold up there for the night, make it to Fort Bowie by tomorrow afternoon." The line shack turned out to be little more than 4 walls and a roof, dusty and abandoned, but solid enough to provide shelter. Noah secured Samson in a small lean-to attached to the back, then set about making the cabin defensible while Willow gathered what supplies they had. "You've done this before," she commented, watching him position himself to view both the door and the single window. "More times than I'd like to admit." He checked his revolver before returning it to his holster. "Life on the run teaches you things. Is that what you've been doing? Running?" Noah was quiet for a moment. "For a while. Then I realized running doesn't solve anything. Rourke and men like him, they don't stop. They just keep taking and destroying until someone stops them." "One person can't stop a man like Rourke," Willow said, the hopelessness she'd carried for months seeping into her voice. "Maybe not, but enough people standing together can." Noah glanced at her. "That's why I'm heading to Fort Bowie. There's a federal marshal there, William Parker. He's been building a case against Rourke for months. With testimony from people who have suffered at Rourke's hands, he might finally have enough to bring him down." Willow stared at him, understanding dawning. "That's why you helped me. You want me to testify." "I want to help you," Noah corrected. "The testimony would help a lot of other people too, but that's your choice to make." Before Willow could respond, a sound outside caught their attention, the subtle crunch of boots on gravel. Noah immediately extinguished their small lamp, plunging the cabin into darkness. "Stay down," he whispered, moving to the window. Willow crouched in the corner, her gun drawn, heart pounding. Through the thin walls she could hear multiple people surrounding the cabin. "We know you're in there, Yates," a voice called out. "The woman too. Come out now and maybe we'll let you die quick." Noah didn't respond, instead signaling to Willow to move away from the walls. "Who is it?" she mouthed. "Rourke's men," he whispered back. "More than I expected. Must have sent word ahead when they found our trail. Last chance, Yates." The voice shouted again. "Or we burn you out," Noah cursed under his breath. 4, maybe 5 of them, bad odds." "What do we do?" Willow asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. Noah's eyes met hers in the darkness. "There's a loose floorboard near the stove. Small tunnel underneath leads out back to the lean-to. It was an escape route in case of Apache raids." "You want me to run?" "I want you to live," Noah said firmly. "Get to Fort Bowie, find Marshal Parker, tell him everything. What about you? I'll keep them busy." Willow shook her head. "No, I'm not leaving you to die for me." "This isn't just about you anymore," Noah insisted. "Rourke needs to be stopped. Your testimony can help make that happen." Before Willow could argue further, a flaming arrow struck the roof, quickly followed by more. Fire spread rapidly across the dry wood and straw. "Go," Noah urged, moving to the door. "I'll cover you," torn between self-preservation and not wanting to abandon the only person who had helped her in months. Willow hesitated. Then, making a swift decision, she moved to the floorboard Noah had indicated. "Noah," she said, pausing as she lifted it. "Thank you." He nodded once, then turned his attention to the door as Willow slipped into the narrow tunnel beneath the cabin. The passage was tight and choked with dust, forcing her to crawl on her belly through complete darkness. Behind her, she could hear gunfire erupting as Noah engaged their attackers. Each shot made her wince, wondering if it might be his last. After what seemed like an eternity, she emerged behind the lean to where Samson was tethered, the horse nervous from the nearby gunfire and spreading flames. With shaking hands, Willow untied him, then froze as a figure stepped from the shadows. "Well, well," drawled a voice she didn't recognize. "Looks like Rourke was right about you trying to slip away." Willow raised her gun without hesitation and fired. The man staggered backward, clutching his chest in surprise before collapsing. Not waiting to see if he would rise again, she mounted Samson and urged him away from the burning cabin, heartsick at leaving Noah behind but determined that his sacrifice wouldn't be in vain. She rode hard through the night, following Noah's directions toward Fort Bowie. The terrain was unfamiliar and treacherous in the darkness, but Samson seemed to know the way, picking his path carefully through the desert landscape. As dawn broke, Willow finally allowed herself to rest briefly, finding shelter in a stand of cottonwoods near a small stream. Samson drank deeply while she checked their supplies. Noah's saddlebags contained enough food for another day, ammunition for her revolver, and a folded piece of paper that proved to be a map of the territory with Fort Bowie clearly marked. There was also a letter addressed simply to Marshall Parker. Willow debated reading it but ultimately decided against it. Noah had trusted her. She would honor that trust. After a short rest, she continued toward Fort Bowie. According to the map, she should reach it by mid-afternoon if she maintained a steady pace. Every mile that passed, however, increased the weight of guilt she felt for leaving Noah behind. He had helped her without question, risked his life for her, and she had abandoned him to Rourke's men. The thought that he might have died so she could escape was nearly unbearable. Midday found her traversing a narrow canyon, the walls rising steeply on either side. It was the perfect place for an ambush, and Willow kept her hand near her gun, scanning the ridges above for any sign of movement. The attack, when it came, was not from above but from ahead, two riders blocking the path forward. Willow reined in Samson sharply, ready to turn back, only to find two more riders had appeared behind her. Trapped, she drew her revolver, determined to go down fighting. But as the riders approached, she realized with a shock that the lead man wore a badge that caught the sunlight, a U.S. Marshal star. "Madam," he called out, keeping his hands visible. "Are you Willow? Noah Yates sent word you might be coming this way." Relief flooded through her. "Noah." "He's alive," the marshal nodded. "Wounded, but alive. He managed to escape after you left, ran into our patrol about 5 miles back. We've been looking for you since dawn." Willow sagged in the saddle, the tension of the past day of the past 6 months suddenly overwhelming. "Take me to him." "Please." The marshal led their small group to a temporary camp where Noah lay on a bedroll, his left shoulder bandaged but his eyes alert. When he saw Willow, a smile broke across his face. "You made it," he said as she dismounted and hurried to his side. "I thought they killed you," she admitted, kneeling beside him. "Nearly did. Bullet caught me as I was making my own escape." He winced as he tried to sit up straighter. "But it seems I'm harder to kill than Rourke's men expected." The marshal, who introduced himself as William Parker, gave them a moment before approaching. "Miss Zane, Noah tells me you have information about Clayton Rourke that could help us build our case against him." Willow looked from Parker to Noah, who nodded encouragingly. "I do," she confirmed. "I was married to one of his victims. I saw what he does to people who cross him, and—" She took a deep breath. "I've done terrible things to survive," she admitted. Noah reached out with his good hand to cover hers. "That's the past," he said softly. "What matters now is stopping Rourke from hurting anyone else." Looking into his eyes, Willow saw understanding rather than judgment. For the first time since her husband's murder, she felt the crushing weight of guilt begin to lift. "I'll tell you everything," she promised Marshall Parker. The next few days passed in a whirlwind as they reached Fort Bowie, and Willow gave her testimony. The fort, established during the Civil War, had grown into a significant military outpost in southeastern Arizona Territory. Its adobe and stone buildings housing not only soldiers, but also a growing civilian population. Noah's wounds were properly treated by the fort's doctor, and while he recovered, Willow found herself spending most of her time at his side. They talked for hours about their pasts, about the hardships they'd endured, about their shared desire to see Rourke brought to justice. "What will you do after?" Noah asked her one evening as they sat on the porch of the infirmary, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Willow had been asking herself the same question. For so long, her only focus had been survival, running from one place to the next, always looking over her shoulder. The possibility of a future beyond that seemed almost unimaginable. "I don't know," she admitted. "I haven't thought that far ahead." "You could stay," Noah suggested, his tone carefully neutral. "Fort Bowie is growing. They need people with grit, people who understand what it takes to build something in this wilderness." Willow studied his profile, noting the way the fading light softened the hard edges life had carved into his features. "What about you? Will you stay?" "I'm thinking about it." He turned to meet her gaze. "Marshall Parker offered me a position. Said he could use a man who knows the territory and isn't afraid to stand against the likes of Rourke." "You'd go back to being a lawman. After everything that happened." Noah was quiet for a moment. "For a long time, I was just existing, moving from place to place, taking odd jobs. Revenge was all I had left." His eyes held hers. "But meeting you, helping you, it reminded me that there are still things worth fighting for, worth living for." The sincerity in his voice made Willow's heart skip. Over the past week, something had changed between them, a connection forged in danger and solidified through shared purpose. Noah understood her in ways no one else could. He didn't flinch from her past or judge her for the choices she'd made to survive. "I think you'd make a fine lawman," she said softly. A week later, Marshall Parker received word that a federal judge would be arriving in Tucson within the month to hear cases, including the mounting evidence against Clayton Rourke. Willow's testimony would be crucial, as would Noah's. "It won't be easy," Parker warned them. "Rourke has influence even with some judges, and he'll certainly send men to prevent you from testifying." "We'll be ready," Noah assured him, his hand unconsciously moving to Willow's shoulder. The marshal nodded, his expression grim but determined. "In the meantime, I'd advise you both to stay within the fort. It's the safest place for you right now." As the days passed, Willow found purpose in helping around the fort. The commander's wife, Mrs. Hollister, took a liking to her and enlisted her help with various tasks. From tending the small garden they maintained to teaching the children of the fort's civilians and soldiers. Noah, still recovering but growing stronger each day, began working with Marshall Parker, reviewing maps and reports, identifying Rourke's known hideouts and operations throughout the territory. They settled into a routine, taking meals together and spending evenings on the walls of the fort, watching the stars emerge over the desert. It was during these quiet moments that Willow began to imagine a future beyond survival, perhaps even a future with Noah. "Tell me about your wife," she asked one night, the question having lingered unspoken between them for weeks. Noah was silent for so long that Willow wondered if he would answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "Her name was Rebecca. We grew up together in a small town near Tombstone. Married young, she was, vibrant, always laughing even when times were hard." A sad smile touched his lips. She believed in me, pushed me to become a deputy when I wasn't sure I had it in me. She sounds wonderful. She was. Noah looked out over the darkened landscape. After she died, I spent 2 years tracking down the men who carried out Rourke's order, found them all eventually. The implication was clear. Willow placed her hand over his. We all do what we must to survive. Sometimes that means fighting back. Noah turned his hand to entwine his fingers with hers. You know, Rebecca would have liked you. She always said I needed someone who could match my stubbornness. Willow laughed softly. I'll take that as a compliment. Their moment was interrupted by the arrival of a soldier, breathless from running. Marshal Parker needs you both right away. A rider just came in from Tucson with news. They found Parker in his office, a telegram in his hand and a troubled expression on his face. What is it? Noah asked. Judge Harrison has been delayed in Santa Fe. He won't reach Tucson for at least another 3 weeks. Parker looked up grimly. And we've received word that Rourke knows about the case we're building. He's gathering his men. For what? Willow asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. To eliminate witnesses. You two are at the top of his list. Parker handed Noah the telegram. I'm arranging for additional security around the fort, but we need to be prepared. Noah read the message, his jaw tightening. How many men does he have? Reports say at least 20, possibly more. Former soldiers, gunmen, the worst sort. The fort has twice that many soldiers, Willow pointed out. Parker shook his head. Most are out on patrol or assigned to escort duties. We're down to skeleton crew right now. Then we need to move, Noah decided. Get Willow somewhere safe until the judge arrives. No, Willow interrupted firmly. I'm tired of running. Rourke has taken enough from both of us. I won't let him take my chance at justice too. Noah turned to her, concern evident in his eyes. Willow, these aren't just a few hired guns. Rourke is bringing an army. Then we'll face them together, she insisted. I didn't come this far to turn back now. A silent communication passed between them, and finally Noah nodded, a mixture of pride and worry in his expression. Together then. The next few days were spent preparing. The commander of Fort Bowie, Colonel James Harrison, mobilized every available soldier. Local ranchers and townspeople who had suffered under Rourke's tyranny volunteered to help defend the fort. Positions were fortified, ammunition stockpiled, and lookouts posted on the surrounding hills. Through it all, Willow remained at Noah's side, helping where she could and refusing to be sequestered away from the preparations. If Rourke's men came for her, she would face them head-on. 3 days later at dawn, the lookouts spotted dust on the horizon, riders approaching from the south, at least 24 by their estimate. They're here, Noah said grimly as he and Willow stood on the fort's walls, watching the approaching cloud of dust. Not quite what Rourke expected, I imagine, Willow replied, surveying the fort's defenses. Every man and woman capable of holding a gun was in position. Noah smiled slightly. No, I don't think he counted on us having friends. As the riders drew closer, they slowed, clearly surprised by the level of defense awaiting them. Through a spyglass, Noah identified the leader, a man named Victor Sandoval, Rourke's second in command and known for his brutal efficiency. They're regrouping, he observed as the riders conferred. They didn't expect this much resistance. Marshal Parker joined them on the wall. Colonel Harrison is sending out a message under white flag, offering them one chance to turn back. They won't take it, Willow said with certainty. She was right. The messenger returned unharmed but with Sandoval's response. Surrender Willow Zane and Noah Yates, or they would attack at noon. Well, that settles that, Noah said, checking his revolver. As noon approached, tension mounted within the fort. Willow found herself stationed in the infirmary, helping to prepare bandages and medicines for the inevitable casualties. Noah came to find her there, his expression solemn. "Willow," he began, then seemed at a loss for words. She set aside the bandages she was rolling. "Noah, whatever you're about to say, save it for after we win this fight." He smiled despite the gravity of the moment. "You're quite something, you know that, so I've been told." She stepped closer to him. "We're going to survive this. We've survived everything else." Noah reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek. "When this is over, when Rourke is behind bars or in the ground, I'd like us to have a real conversation about the future, our future." Willow's heart raced at his words. "I'd like that too." For a moment, they stood there, the chaos of preparation fading into the background. Then Noah leaned down, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that held both promise and desperation, a moment stolen from the jaws of impending violence. When they parted, Willow saw in his eyes the same determination she felt. "Go," she said softly. "Do what you need to do. I'll be here when it's over." Noah nodded, then turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "Stay safe." "You too," she replied, fighting the fear that this might be the last time she saw him. At precisely noon, Sandoval's men attacked. The initial assault was met with a volley of rifle fire from the fort's defenders, but the attackers pressed forward with reckless determination. The sound of gunfire was deafening as Willow worked in the infirmary, helping the doctor tend to the wounded, who began to arrive in a steady stream. Through snippets of conversation, she pieced together what was happening outside. Sandoval's men had breached the outer gate but were pinned down in the courtyard. Noah and Marshal Parker were leading the defense, holding the line against overwhelming odds. An hour into the battle, the infirmary door burst open and two of Rourke's men stormed in, guns drawn. The doctor moved to shield his patients, but one of the intruders struck him down with the butt of his rifle. "There she is," the second man shouted, spotting Willow. "Rourke wants her alive." Willow reached for the scalpel on the nearby tray, but before she could grab it, a shot rang out. The man who had spoken staggered backward, a look of surprise on his face as he collapsed. Behind him stood Mrs. Hollister, the commander's wife, holding a smoking derringer. "Get down," she shouted as the second intruder turned his gun toward her. Willow didn't hesitate. She lunged for the fallen scalpel and drove it into the man's leg. He howled in pain, his shot going wild, giving Mrs. Hollister time to fire again. This time her aim was true, and the intruder joined his companion on the floor. "Are you hurt?" Mrs. Hollister asked, hurrying to Willow's side. "I'm fine." "The doctor just knocked out," Mrs. Hollister confirmed after checking him. "Help me secure the door, there might be more of them." Together, they barricaded the entrance with whatever furniture they could move, then returned to tending the wounded, the doctor soon regaining consciousness to assist them. Outside, the battle raged on. Occasionally, Willow would catch glimpses through the windows, men fighting, falling, the courtyard becoming a chaotic battlefield of dust and blood. As the afternoon wore on, the sounds of gunfire gradually diminished. When it finally ceased altogether, Willow held her breath, waiting for news. The silence stretched, broken only by the moans of the wounded in the infirmary. Then came a pounding on the door. "Willow, it's Noah. Open up." With trembling hands, she helped move the barricade, then flung open the door to find Noah standing there, bloodied but alive. Without thinking, she threw herself into his arms. "You're alive," she breathed, pulling back to examine him. "You're hurt." "Just a graze," he assured her, though the blood soaking his left sleeve suggested otherwise. "It's over. Sandoval is dead. The rest have surrendered or fled." Relief washed over her. "And our people?" Noah's expression sobered. "We lost 5. A dozen more wounded. Could have been much worse." "What now?" she asked, helping him to a chair so the doctor could examine his wound. "Now we prepare for the next fight," Marshal Parker said, entering the infirmary. He looked exhausted but determined. "Rourke will be furious when he learns Sandoval failed. He'll come himself next time." "Let him come," Noah said grimly as the doctor cut away his sleeve to reveal a deep bullet furrow across his upper arm. "We'll be ready." The following days were filled with rebuilding and strengthening the fort's defenses. Word was sent to nearby settlements warning of the potential for more violence and requesting additional assistance. Slowly, volunteers arrived, ranchers, miners, townspeople, all with their own reasons for standing against Rourke. A week after the attack, as Willow and Noah walked along the fort's perimeter in the cool evening air, a rider approached at full gallop. The guards admitted him immediately it was a courier from Tucson. "News?" Noah asked as the man dismounted. The courier nodded, catching his breath. "Judge Harrison arrived in Tucson yesterday. He's convening court in 3 days, and—" He glanced at Willow. "Clayton Rourke has been arrested." Stunned silence followed his announcement. "Arrested?" Marshal Parker echoed in disbelief. "By whom?" "Army patrol caught him crossing the border from Mexico with a wagon load of illegal weapons. They had no idea who he was until they got him to Fort Huachuca, and the commander there recognized him from your wanted circulars." Noah let out a laugh of disbelief. "All this planning, all this fighting. And he gets arrested for gun smuggling." "Sometimes justice comes from unexpected directions," Parker observed, a smile breaking across his weathered face. That night, Fort Bowie celebrated. The threat that had hung over them for weeks had lifted, replaced by the promise of true justice. Willow found herself swept up in the festivities, dancing with Noah despite his bandaged arm, both of them giddy with relief and the sudden freedom from fear. As the celebration wound down, Noah led her away from the crowd, to a quiet corner of the fort's walls where they could see the stars stretching endlessly above the desert. "I believe we were going to have a conversation," he said, turning to face her. "About the future." Willow smiled. "I believe we were." Noah took her hands in his. "I know it hasn't been long and we've mostly known each other under the worst circumstances, but in that time, I've come to admire your courage, your resilience, your heart." His blue eyes held hers steadily. "I'm not asking for promises. Just a chance to see where this might lead." "Noah Yates," Willow said softly. "I've spent the past 6 months running from my past. I think I'm ready to start running toward a future instead, preferably one with you in it." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise after the longest night. He pulled her close, his kiss conveying all the words that still remained unspoken between them. 3 days later, they traveled to Tucson with Marshal Parker to attend Rourke's trial. The courthouse was packed as Willow took the stand, her voice steady as she recounted everything: her husband's murder, her captivity, her escape. When asked about the man she had killed during that escape, she didn't flinch from the truth. "I've done terrible things to survive," she admitted, her eyes finding Noah's in the crowd. "Given the circumstances, Mrs. Zane," Judge Harrison said, "I believe most would consider your actions justified self-defense." When Noah testified about Rourke's role in his wife's murder, Willow watched the man himself seated between 2 guards, his once imposing presence diminished by prison clothes and shackles. He showed no remorse, no emotion beyond contempt for the proceedings. But when the judge announced his verdict guilty on all counts, with a sentence of hanging to be carried out within the month, Willow saw something flicker in Rourke's eyes. Fear, perhaps, or simply the realization that his reign of terror had finally ended. Outside the courthouse, Noah pulled Willow close. "It's really over," he murmured against her hair. A new beginning, she corrected, smiling up at him. In the months that followed, they built that new beginning together. Noah accepted Marshall Parker's offer of a position, becoming his deputy and helping to bring law to the still wild territory. Willow, with her mother's ring finally and rightfully back in her possession, used the small amount of money it brought to open a school in Fort Bowie, teaching the children of soldiers and settlers alike. They married the following spring, in a simple ceremony attended by the friends they'd made Marshall Parker, Colonel and Mrs. Hollister, the doctor who had tended them both, and dozens of others who had stood with them against Rourke. "Never thought I'd find happiness again," Noah confessed as they stood on the porch of the small house they now shared, watching the sunset on their wedding day. "Not after Rebecca, not in this harsh land." Willow leaned against him, content in a way she had never expected to be again. "We both had to travel through darkness to find each other." "Was it worth it?" he asked, his arm tightening around her waist, looking up at him, this man who had seen the worst of her and loved her anyway, who had helped her find not just safety but purpose. Willow nodded. "Every step." 2 years later, as their first child, a son they named Thomas, slept peacefully in his cradle, Willow and Noah sat together on that same porch. Fort Bowie had grown into a proper settlement, with Noah now serving as town marshal. The school Willow had started had expanded to 2 rooms, with a second teacher helping her manage the growing number of children. "You ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" Willow asked, her head resting on Noah's shoulder. "If you hadn't found me at that creek?" "Sometimes," Noah admitted. "But then I look at what we've built, at our son, at you." He turned to kiss her gently. "And I'm grateful for every choice, every hardship that led us here." Willow smiled, thinking of the long journey they had both traveled from loss and violence to this moment of peace. Their pasts would always be part of them, the scars they carried testimonies to all they had survived. But their future, that bright, promising horizon stretching before them, was theirs to shape together. "So am I," she whispered, as the last rays of sunlight painted the Arizona desert in gold. "So am I."